We'll, after Mark's presentation, we'll have opportunity for questions too, but I'm sure John will be available to help if an answer is needed. But with that, I have no glowing introduction for you, sir.
Okay.
I can tell you that Mark O'Connell is in his 23rd year with the association, his 10th year as the Executive Director. For those of you in the room that don't know it, I was fortunate enough this past September to be elected second Vice President of the Wisconsin Counties Association, and if around, will serve as its President in 2014. But aside from that, I can tell you that in my 6 years as Board Chair, I've come to know not only Mark as a great resource, not only for the state, but I can tell you that Mark is respected nationally. But also I've come to know him as a real friend who has come to, whenever I've called, especially during the floods of 2008 or some other time like that, has been really willing and able to work and lobby on the county's behalf to get what we needed accomplished. And so with that, without any more of a bio, sir, you have the floor. Welcome to Sauk County again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe I'll just add a couple more things to my biography. A lot of folks I know in the room, but some I don't. So let me give you a little bit more. I live with my wife and 2 of my 3 children in the Prairie area. I have my wife Connie is the former insurance commissioner with the state of Wisconsin. Now she's practicing insurance law. How she does it more than 15 minutes a day is beyond me. It's insurance law. I think it'd be difficult. I have my 25-year-old son who lives in Arizona. He's 190 pounds, 6'4". A lot of people think he looks like George Clooney, so pretty much spitting image of me. I have my middle son, 12-year-old, as you might guess, O'Connell. We are very Irish. My middle son's name is Seamus. He has no idea how much fun he's going to have with that name as an adult, but so he's Seamus O'Connell, which for those of you who don't know is it's Gaelic for James in English. Then I have my 8-year-old little girl, Claire. She is clearly in charge of the entire operation. She has got me wrapped around her little finger. I'm very comfortable there. I will do almost anything. I can tell now, after raising 2 sons, I'm going to be an awful, horrible, terrible, overprotective father of a daughter. I know it already. And when she starts dating at the age of 37. So that's a little bit personal background. What we're going to talk about today are some trends. And as the chairman indicated, we're going to get to Wisconsin. But first we're going to talk about the planet, global. And hopefully I'll draw the links as to why it's important to us. So, and in the process, we're going to talk about some things that are going to happen. So we'll do a lot of future predicting tonight. All right, this first trend we'll talk about is our population, our global demographics. In 1950, 23% of our global population was in developed countries. By the year 2050, only 10% of our population will be in developed countries. That means 90% will be in developing countries. And developing countries is a nice way to say poor. So we have 10% of our population in wealthy countries, 90% in poor. We have never had a time on this is mankind existed, where a 90-10 split in wealth has been sustained. And it will not be sustained in 2050 either. So what will happen? The 10% wealthy countries, there will be an outflow of wealth to the 90% poor countries in order for the 10% developed to maintain the quality of life that they have or they've been able to achieve. What does that mean in practical terms? It means that federal dollars will leave the U.S. and go to developing countries. When a federal dollar leaves the United States, it is no longer available to be distributed to the states. When the states have less dollars, that means they don't have the dollars to distribute to the locals. So this trend absolutely will affect us. It will affect the state of Wisconsin, and it will affect us. This photograph, you can make a reasonable argument that there is a link between technology and wealth. This is a photograph of the world at night. The countries of Yemen, Niger, Angola, Congo, I can't reach it, but if you looked at Africa and in the middle and then northeast, that's where those countries are. These are the countries where it's basically dark, basically black. These countries also have reasonably significant population increases going on. Those countries are least able to sustain themselves now, but are going to grow in population rather quickly. The global population over age 65. In 1950, 8% of the world's population was over the age of 65. By the year 2050, 27% of the world's population will be over age 65. And that's assuming that we have no medical advances in the next 40 years. Now, the likelihood that we will have a medical advance that will address cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, any number of diseases in the next 40 years, many scientists believe is 100%. We will address some of those, or maybe all of those. If that's the case, 27% of the world's population over 65, forget it. It'll be well into the 30s, possibly into the 40s. Can we reasonably expect to live an extra 25 years? Oh, absolutely. I mean, the mortality tables today, for children born today, we expect them to live to, give or take, right around 80. With any of these medical advances, our younger people today will have lots of, many people over the age of 100. Many of them. In fact, not to get too far out there, but some scientists have predicted this, that within the lifetime of people living today, maybe not my generation, baby boomers, all of you, maybe not us, but very young, in the lifetime of young children today, we will actually see modified life forms. Some scientists have predicted. We'll have the carbon life form, like us. We'll have the pure artificial intelligence life form, which is completely manufactured. And then the most popular type of life form, a combination of artificial intelligence and carbon. Some scientists have said, we really don't know how long the human brain can last, because the body gives out. Once we start taking care of the body better, we solve the body problems, who knows how long the mind can last? 2, 3, 400 years? In fact, some scientists have actually predicted that there will come a time when we will take a month or two break in our lives and go get some of our systems replaced. We'll replace our circulatory system. We'll replace our cardiovascular system. Some have even predicted we will replace our reproductive systems. And since we don't know how long the human body can last, our brain can last because of the body, if we can replace our systems, maybe you could have children when you're 250 years old.
No thanks.
And if that's the case, no thanks. I know what you're thinking. I don't like the kids I have now, much less. No. And actually, we're not talking about it tonight, but it's a very different dynamic actually today with our younger people. Today, our younger people actually like their parents. When many of us are baby boomers here in this room, when we were growing up, we wouldn't be caught dead showing our parents some sign of affection. Today, the early teens, mid-teens, even into the 20s, they actually like you, their parents. And, although you may not want to admit it, you kind of like them. And actually, just as an aside, many of us in the room, the baby boomers, we drove this economy for a long, long time. We created more, we produced more, we consumed more, we threw away more than any other generation before us and any in existence after us. We had more opportunities for us than any other generation. Actually, we have more opportunities for us. We have more opportunities than our children today. And in fact, right now today is the first time that children will not have likely as high a quality of life as their parents. Right now today, we're experiencing that generation. But in large part, because we did so well, we are giving our children many more opportunities than we have. And our children are going off and doing all kinds of things that they would like to do, and we're basically funding it. And sometimes they'll be successful, but when they're not, they come back and live with you again, and you welcome them. And because they kind of like you and you kind of like them, it's working out quite well. And if you're thinking, not my child, Just wait, they're coming back. All right, global demographics. In the next 10 years, we're going to experience a reduction in the workforce in Europe and Japan by 1%. By 2030, the workforce is going to start to shrink by 1.5%. We're going to have a medical field shortage in our country, 9,000 geriatric doctors short in this country, 400,000 nurses shortage in our country. If you have a young person, they have no idea what they want to do in life, direct them to this field, because they will dictate the terms of their existence. The ratio of working age to retirees is going to drop significantly in the next 50 years. And the burden is going to be placed on what is called the millennial generation, the 20-somethings, and Generation Z, which is, we're seeing kind of a split with, let's say, 9, 10, 11, and younger. These younger people are going to have they don't even know it. They have a gigantic tab to pay. We have generated a huge debt, and they're going to have to. Some of these younger people think, they look at their parents, many of us, and say, okay, so you work a long time, work real hard, you retire maybe in your 60s. They're thinking, I might want to retire by 50s. If they're even talking about retirement or thinking about it. More likely, these younger people today, the 20-somethings, especially the younger single-digit kids, they'll be working well into their 70s, well into maybe their 80s. In our Social Security system, when we started, we had 42 people giving for every one receiving. We are fast approaching a time when only 2.2 will be giving for every one taking. Absolutely, without question, cannot be sustained. That cannot work. The numbers, how creative you might get, absolutely cannot work. This chart here, without going through it in a lot of detail, and I won't go into exactly how the Social Security system works in any great detail, but basically, the system is it doesn't collect dollars, hang on to them, and then hand them out when the person retires. That's how our Wisconsin retirement system works, by the way. That retirement system has lots and lots of dollars stacked up and invested. I mean, I suppose in some respect you could even write your name on the dollar when it goes in. It stays there for a long time and gets invested. In the Social Security system, not the case. Dollars come in, they're held for about 8 seconds, and then they leave. Now in this case, right now today, we get those dollars in the Social Security system. We don't send them out to a recipient right away. Instead, we go drop them into the general fund. The general fund gives us an IOU. So the system hangs on to that IOU, and we earn interest on it. Well, about the year, 2000, well, in the next couple of years, we're going to stop taking more money in than is going out. And then about the year 2020, and we're sort of start cashing in our IOUs. So we're going to bring in $10, we're going to start paying out $12. Well, we don't have the extra $2. So the system will take one of its $2 IOUs, go to the general fund and say, I got to cash this in. Give me 2 real dollar bills for my IOU. And the general fund will say, sure, I have it right, wait, let me issue a treasury bill, maybe China will buy it, and then I can get $2 for you and give it to you. That's what's going to happen. And then in 2028, or 2042, we run out of IOUs. And so we don't have, we have $40 coming in, $50 going out, and no more IOUs. You can quibble with the dates, and they will change depending upon interest rates, but this is the diagram of why our Social Security system can't work. By 2030, under current trends, if nothing else happens, we don't do anything else, by 2030, our entire federal budget will be spent on 4 things: debt, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. $0 for transportation, $0 for education, $0 for any environmental activity, $0 for everything else. Only these 4 items. And very quickly after 2030, we don't even have enough money to spend on these items under our current trends. In terms of longevity, each generation is living roughly 3 years longer than the previous. You can see here we're roughly about 75 and 80 years old, or 74 and 80. Let's see, 80 and 78 for, what do I know? 75 for males, 80 for females, roughly a blended average of about 77 years old. In 2004, it's an interesting statistic. In 2004, we had a 50,000 person drop in the death rate. In other words, in 2004, and it was the biggest drop in 70 years, in 2004, 50,000 people that were supposed to die didn't, which is great for that 50,000, but it's very bad for demographics. That was a gigantic shift in that one particular year, and since that time, it's been less. We've had many more people that mortality tables were supposed to not be around, but are. Middle age, by the way, is being redefined. Middle age today is 50 to 75. You have to be 76 years old to get out of middle age. So if that gives you some, if you're 49 and you're engaging in all kinds of foolishness, it's fine. You're not even middle age yet. It's perfectly fine with that. You can engage in all that you wish.
Our kids don't know that.
Our kids, well, yeah, that's true. All right. Fertility rates. I know you can't see all of these, but let me just give you, this is the number of births per female. In Britain, we're currently at 1.91. Taiwan, 1.16. In Singapore, 0.78. Less than one birth per female. These are generally developed countries, many European countries, developed countries. And the magic number to replace your population is 2.1. You need 2.1 births per female to maintain your population. And in a consumer-driven economy, you need to have a certain number of people consuming, and producing, but consuming as well. Britain is not there. Neither is the Netherlands, Sweden, China, Spain, Switzerland, Russia, Austria, Italy, Japan, Greece, Poland, or Taiwan. Certainly not Singapore. None of them are replacing their current population. That goes back to that previous slide. Japan's workforce is going to start to decrease in the next 20 years. Well, how about the countries that are well above the 2.1? Niger, 7.52. Uganda, Mali, Somalia. The four fastest growing countries, although not in terms of pure population, because mortality rates are significantly higher, and infant mortality significantly higher in these countries. The world population rate, or fertility rate, 2.47. So we are growing in terms of world population. In the US, 2.06. Remember that the magic number to maintain your population is 2.1. We're at 2.06, so we're pretty much staying even, which is important in terms of a consumer economy, which, for the most part, that's what we are. We're a much more technology, knowledge, service-based consumer economy today. Interesting though, this 2.06, when you look at what makes up the 2.06, native-born, people born on U.S. soil, the fertility rate is much lower. First-time entrants, citizens into the country, much, much higher. But it's interesting, after one generation within the country, that rate drops significantly, even for those people that have immigrated to the U.S. What that really means, though, is that our demographics in this country are changing very quickly. And we're going to look very, very different in 10 years, even more so in 20 and 30 years. Extreme poverty is defined as $1.25 or less per day to live on. Now, interestingly, despite the global recession that we've been in, the number of people, proportion of people, proportion of the population in extreme poverty has not increased. In fact, it has actually decreased, and it continues to decrease today. Let's see, this is really hard to read here. Let's, oh, okay, while the United States represents 5% of the world's population, is that right, 5%? 5%? We consume 25% of the world's oil. We are arguably now, the most developed country on the planet, but we consume an awful lot of resources. And energy policy, or the source of energy, will be a major, major issue. If not in our lifetime, absolutely within our children's lifetime. Anytime we see a generation, a population that's in existence sees the end of a particular resource, anytime that happens, and they can see the end of it, there's big trouble. And we've had countless examples throughout mankind's history. The moment that we see the end of oil, the moment we're over peak and we can see the end and it's within our lifetime, is the moment that we will have major disruptions, nation disruptions, national conflicts, internal conflicts all over the world. Now, some scientists have argued we're there. Most scientists have argued we're not. Will we ever actually get to the end of oil? I think that more scientists than not predict that we will find a replacement energy source for oil before we actually have a population in existence within their lifetime. The end of oil might be seen. Let's see. This is a peer study, but this trend is very disturbing. Some have predicted that by 2050, we will have depleted our fisheries, our natural fisheries. That's actually a very disturbing trend. This one is not coming very clear at all.
Healthcare costs.
Okay. Oh, our healthcare costs. Our healthcare costs are roughly double what other developed countries pay. Yet, when we look at mortality and quality, there is no appreciable difference. We are paying an awful lot in terms of our personal income for a product that the rest of the developed world doesn't see much of a difference in terms of quality. This one, let's see. Oh, 30%, let's see. Half of America's youth in urban areas and 30% overall of our younger people do not graduate from high school. And this is of critical importance because every study that will look at this issue will tell you this. There is a direct link between the education level of the population and per capita personal income. If you want to raise your per capita personal income, and I know there's lots of things in between, but if you want to raise your per capita personal income, and if you do so, you cannot, if you have the same tax burden, it is simply distributed among greater wealth. But if you want to do that, you need a more educated population. So if we want that, and there's lots, I don't want to get into an argument, but there's lots in between, job creation and tax rate, all kinds of things in between. But every study that looks at it will tell you direct correlation between per capita personal income and education level of population. If you buy that, and there's every reason to buy it, if you believe any of the studies that have looked at it, then we want a more highly educated population, which actually means we ought to be investing in our four-year institutions, our two-year institutions, our tech colleges, and as the feeder institutions, K-12 system. And I would suggest that we don't necessarily spend any dollars on those systems. We do invest in those systems. As an aside, I did spend, Mike, was that yesterday we were at UW-Berkeley?
Yes.
Okay, yesterday I spent 4 hours with Tom Plager and his leadership team, UW-Berkeley, Sauk County. I have to tell you, and I've visited other campuses before, you have an absolute diamond. That two-year college is incredible. And the people that are part of that, I talked to several students on campus, I talked to the leadership team, I spent a lot of time with Tom. You have just an incredible diamond here. And if this area is going to be successful, and as John indicated, you have all the indicators are pointing that you will be, I have to believe that two-year college and what Tom has done there is a very, very big part of that. And I can also tell you, he is incredibly appreciative of the relationship that the two-year college has with the county and with the city of Berkeley. He's very, very happy. Yes, sir.
I met with the University of Madison and extension officials this past week, and I learned something that really surprised me. During the Great Depression, there was never a cut in funding to the University of Wisconsin.
Wow.
During the Great Depression, never a cut.
I think that's something we should be proud of as a state. I mean, that may be one of the reasons that we are who we are.
Well, and look at the kind of people that came out of that time to be really world leaders.
Yes. Comment by Bill was look at the people that came out of that time. World leaders and some of the most I think, innovative, visionary, creative people that we've ever experienced in our lifetimes. This is amazing. I produced this slide some time ago, but just today, it was in the news about the potential next debt bomb that could go off. The bomb is $867 billion large. Anybody have an idea what that might be, Senator?
Student debt.
Student debt. $867 billion of student debt. $25,000 on average for a student. And as I indicated earlier, we are just now today, we have a population in existence that will have fewer opportunities than their parents. First time ever. First time. Just as an aside, while John Koskinen, and I do want to compliment John, we worked together in the mid-'80s, I guess, at the Department of Administration, and I think John...
Late 80s, come on.
Late 80s? Okay, late 80s. Yeah, late 80s. I think John's one of the smartest guys in government today, both inside and outside the state of Wisconsin. But in any event, it was just a few short years ago, we were approaching $1 trillion of credit card debt. $1 trillion of credit card debt. And we paid that way down. But back, and that was 2008, 2009. At nearly $1 trillion of credit card debt, if we just do the math quickly, if we assume for a moment that only people over the age of 18 had credit cards. Now, I know it's not true entirely because some of you have given your children credit cards, but nevertheless, if we assume for a moment that it's only over age 18. That is, on $1 trillion of debt, with that population, that's roughly $9,000 per person. So if you were 5 years ago in 2008, let's say 2008, if you were a household and you had 3 people in your household, you, your spouse, and 1 child over the age of 18, and you had, that'd be, and 3 times 9 would be 27,000 of credit card debt on average. If you only had $15,000 of credit card debt, you were part of the problem that we got into the Great Recession because you weren't spending enough money in our consumer-led economy. You were the problem. If you had $40,000 of credit card debt, and on average you should have had 27, then you were doing everything you possibly could. Now hopefully you paid it down, but and in fact we've paid an awful lot of credit card, actually all consumer debt down. This is an interesting statistic. In 2011, for the first time in over a decade, we actually had less tax revenue in the states, $2 billion overall. Personal income taxes were cut in 21 states. Corporate taxes were cut in 20 states in 2011.
Is that a cut or reduction in receipts?
Reduction in collections.
Thank you.
20 states reduced corporate tax take. 21 states reduced personal income tax take. This is an interesting statistic. Some have indicated this is a bellwether for what if the economy is succeeding or not. And you can probably guess what it is, but I'll ask. There's an from January 2011 to January 2012, we had an 8.7% increase in this particular activity. It represented $220 billion to the economy. Anybody have a guess what that activity is that grew by almost 9% in the past year? Eating out at restaurants where you sit at the table and get waited on. Don't come to the table but order over the counter, $211 billion worth in the economy. So 220 versus, well, 400 overall, but 220 billion of revenue, of economic activity revenue based on going to a restaurant, having someone serve you. And that's what some folks have indicated. That's a bellwether for whether we are on the mend or not. I think it's just anecdotal, but it's there. I'm going to skip some of these because John had gone over them, but this is it's really small, I know, but this is what this chart shows, and the red line is the one you want to care about. This is our Highway Trust Fund. We're in big trouble at the federal level in terms of Highway Trust Fund. And if we're going to succeed as a nation, as a state, as a local economy, we have to have a solid infrastructure. And that means a hard infrastructure, transportation in all areas, as well as a soft infrastructure. And the soft infrastructure is going to be broadband, soft access. And on broadband for a moment. Having broadband, having high-speed internet access will not guarantee economic success. It won't. But not having it will pretty much guarantee you won't have success. So if we're going to succeed economically, we have to have a solid hard infrastructure, the road you can walk on, and a solid soft infrastructure. Well, much of our hard infrastructure assistance comes from the federal level. We are not generating any additional dollars in the Federal Highway Trust Fund, and it's, for the most part, depleted. We're stumbling and bumbling along and pasting it together by having these add-ons and continuances, but really we're in trouble. Our high school graduation rate, the important point here, this red line, is Milwaukee. We're roughly about 90% as a state, but Milwaukee is not. And as John alluded to earlier, Milwaukee's got lots of troubles. We have lots of problems in Milwaukee. Here's why we should care about that while we're here in Sauk County. Almost every study that looks at this issue will tell you, as goes the major metropolitan area of a state, so goes the economy of the state. Our major metropolitan area is Milwaukee. I don't care if you're in Marinette, if you're in Bayfield, or if you're in Grant County. If Milwaukee goes down, we're going to be hurt. And why would Milwaukee go down? A whole host of reasons. But one of them is the education level of the population. And the Milwaukee K-12 system it's been in trouble for years, it continues to be in trouble. And when we're hovering around 60% graduation, 50-60% graduation rate with the Milwaukee K-12 system, we've got big problems as a state. We'll skip that, we went through that. While it says 2007, I mean the trend is what's important here. Manufacturing jobs in the U.S. Now, we have seen a slight uptick in manufacturing jobs that had previously left the U.S. coming back. This line, it would not surprisingly, Wisconsin is the same way. Although we have a significant portion of our workforce in manufacturing occupations, ever so slightly in Wisconsin, but ever so quickly as a nation, we are moving more toward a knowledge, technology, service-based economy. That's simply how it's going. We don't have to like it or dislike it, but that is how it's going. In the future, several things are going to happen. We are going to see an increase in retirement age. It's just going to happen. We're living longer. We are fast approaching a time when we may actually be in consumption mode in terms of Social Security for more years than we actually spent working. And that cannot be sustained. So we're seeing it now. There's a schedule, there's a rate, but I think it's going to have to increase substantially. So we will see retirement age increase much, much more. Maybe it will be for the people starting work tomorrow, but nevertheless, it will have to increase. We will see an increase in immigration, and not to get into a big debate about immigration policy in this country, but when we look at a knowledge, technology, service-based economy really led by consumerism, we need enough consumers consuming. We're at 2.06 in fertility rate, in population replacement rate, which puts us better than a lot of European countries and a lot of other developed countries, but we're still not at full replacement. To get to full replacement, it will take immigration. I'll tell you, Canada saw it. It was now about 8 years ago, they implemented a policy where they were going to increase immigration by 300,000 people a year in each of 5 successive years. Now that's only 1.5 million people, but when the whole country only has 31 million people to begin with, that was a lot. They saw it. They needed to have a replacement rate in Canada that either met or exceeded a population in Canada that met or exceeded their population replacement rate. In the future, we're also going to see baby boomers, my generation, moving out. The biggest consumers and I've often joked as baby boomers, I said we created more, we produced more, we threw away more, we collected everything. We accumulated everything. We accumulated property. We accumulated cars. We accumulated houses. We accumulated spouses. We collected lots of different things. We did more of that than any other generation. And that drove the economy for a long time, but we're moving out. And we won't be nearly as the voracious consumers when we're in our retirement years as we were in our working years. The Generation X and millennials are moving in, and they'll be making very different decisions. Because for baby boomers, we are what we did for a living. As baby boomers, as that roughly 40 to mid-60 population, we actually believe that you could buy happiness. If you give us enough money, we will be happy anywhere. And money motivated us, and it's not a bad thing. That's what drove the economy for a long time. But the Gen X and the millennials, the 30-somethings and 20-somethings, they don't think like that. Money is not number one. It's not unimportant, but it's not number one. It's quality of life. It's doing the things they want to do. If I line up 100 baby boomers and ask 99 of them, ask all 100 of them, tell me about you. The first thing they would tell me is what they do for a living. That's number one. Because who they are is what they do. If I lined up 100 millennials, 20-somethings, let's assume for a moment that they actually are employed, but let's line up 100 of them, and I asked them, tell me about you. Over 90 of them, with the first thing they would tell me is what they like doing. I would hear, well, I really like rock climbing. I like waterboarding. I like downhill slalom skiing or with snowboarding. They would tell us something that they like to do. Now, in the top 5 things might be what it is they do for a living. But boomers, we live to work. That's who we are. Gen X and millennials, they are working to do what they really want to do, which is live. It's very different, and we need to recognize that. Basic attitudes are going to be homogenized. These Xers and millennials have more in common with each other, even if each other is on the other side of the planet, than they do with another generation sitting right next to them. Self-reliance, cooperation are going to be valued because in an environment where resources are scarce, that is how you maximize use. Political parties are going to take a hit. If we were to ask baby boomers, Democrat, Republican, Independent, or anything in between, we'd have lots of opinions. If you ask a millennial, Democrat, Republican, Independent, quite frankly, they could care less. What they were going to say is this: what did you say you were going to do? Did you do it, or are you moving toward it? Oh, you are? Okay, great. Then I'm with you. Oh, by the way, and you're a political party? Which one is it, and what is a political party? That's going to be the mindset. Very different. Energy, lots of changes. We will have to modify our behavior on energy. It is at $4 a gallon, just like our healthcare system. It is absolutely consuming us. We cannot sustain the tremendous outflow of resources, of wealth, from this country outside our borders because of the price of energy. We are going to see a dramatic increase in elderly in the workplace. There's no two ways about it. Pre-2008, we may have seen not nearly as many, but post-2008, we saw some people's total wealth decrease by 20, 30, 40, 50%. They can't retire. They'll be spending much more time in the workplace, not at the work that they used to do, but somewhere in the workplace. We're going to see these elder villages and 65-plus version of friends, where unrelated 65-plus individuals are going to be living together out of scarcity of resources and living more efficiently together. We'll see a dramatic infusion of dollars into Social Security and Medicare. Quite frankly, I think what we're going to see in Social Security is we're going to see an increase in the retirement age. We're going to see a means testing going on. We're probably going to see an increase in the cap on the salary on which you pay Social Security tax. If you do all 3 of those things, among all the federal problems that we have, all the national problems we have, that is probably the easiest one to fix. Practically speaking, not politically speaking, but practically speaking. We are going to see, no doubt, we are going to see some geriatric medical advances in the coming years, and that is going to put incredible pressure on our healthcare system. And you know, it's a big issue with the Supreme Court right now, and they will rule on whether we have this system or whatever, some kind of system or not. I can tell you this: given the demographics and any assumption we have about solving any of the afflictions that afflict humans, if we have a dramatic increase in our longevity, our healthcare system, as it's currently structured, cannot support that population. It can't. In the future, what can be done? I think we need to recognize we've got a demographics challenge. Here in our state, we have 13% of our population over the age of 65. By the year 2030, that's going to change to 21% over the age of 65. And again, that's assuming no advances in medical technology. If we have any advances, that 21% is going to be much, much higher than that. And that's below the national average. We need to recognize that. We're getting old very quickly. And this older population is going to be around for a lot longer. And we don't, while the millennials are a pretty big bubble on the demographics, there aren't nearly enough of them making enough money, contributing enough into our social systems to support this gigantic bubble that's going to be here for a long time. The numbers don't work. We need to recognize that we have an economy and tax structure mismatch. We have a new millennium knowledge technology-based economy, and we're supporting that with a 1950s tax system. We tax things that you can drop on your foot, but increasingly our economy is new millennium knowledge technology-based. If our economy is going to grow, a good part of that growth is going to be in the service area. It's going to be in the soft area, not the hard product, the service area. Yet our tax structure doesn't capture that. If we would buy this, our tax collections ought to grow to the extent the economy grows. All right, I'm not sure that we ought to buy that, but let's say we did. Our tax collections ought to grow to the extent the economy does. When your tax collections to your economy better be linked. And in our case, our new millennium technology knowledge-based economy, ever more so every day, is not linked to our tax structure where we tax things you can drop on your foot. Well, how do you change that? Well, you could do it by expanding the basket of goods and services on which you apply the sales tax. You could actually do this. You could lower the sales tax rate, expand the basket, provide an exemption on the income tax form for lower income, change the sales tax to a consumption tax, not collect any more revenue. Yet tomorrow, when we link our economy and tax structure, we have revenues that would grow to the extent the economy grows. You could actually do that. We need to recognize that. We need to recognize, we just spoke about it, that we have a new millennium knowledge technology-based economy. We love our manufacturing sector, and we want to keep it, and we want to grow it, and we want to make it advanced, and we want to have high-tech manufacturing. We absolutely want that. But we also got to recognize that our economy is changing, and our systems that we apply to that economy ought to change as well. We need to recognize that the private sector does two things really, really well. It creates wealth and employs people. And government has a responsibility to create a system, an environment, where the private sector can do just that, employ people and create wealth. And without getting into any sort of debate about private sector needs to pay more in taxes, not paying their fair share, or the public sector is wasting too much money, all they want to do is spend, without getting into any of that. What we should want as a society is a really, really successful private sector. If we have a company making $10 million, if we have a Culvers making $10 million net profit, we want them to make $1 billion. We want them to be really, really successful. They will employ more people and create more wealth. And if we have that more wealth, even with our flawed current tax structure, we disperse that tax burden. And really, if we recognize our demographics challenge, where the wealth makers of tomorrow don't think like the wealth makers of today, that quality of life is important. If we have this increased private sector wealth, we apply a tax rate with those collections, we should invest them in our communities to make them attractive to the smart young wealth makers of tomorrow. If we did that, then we have that supply in a decreasing labor market environment, and we're going to have that in the next 20 years, and a decreasing world population environment. If we did that, we have smart young people that want to be here in attractive communities, feeding a private sector where we're employing people and creating wealth. That cycle can actually be sustained. These artificial wedges or breaks that we have in a cycle like that, like a stimulus package, it's fine temporarily, but long-term can't be sustained. I mean, we saw the slides from John. We're going to see a big bump here when we don't have that $400 million of federal stimulus money. And I think we talked about this smart young people. I'm going to leave you with two quotes. One from Theodore Roosevelt. In a moment of indecision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. And I think as a nation, and to some extent as a state, although I would argue that as a state, we are making some very, very difficult decisions. This other quote, we do not like to think ahead, and yet that is the only solution. We need to put ourselves 20, 30, 50, 100 years into the future. Look around and consume what we see. We need to envision the society we want and then make the decisions today to get us to that point. I have often argued that those of us in government, and I would argue state government, city, town, village, school district, county, we are in government to help people we will never meet, to assist people we're never going to see. That's what government's about. Not about helping today. It's about putting us in a position for future success. And that sometimes means the decisions today are uncomfortable, are difficult, but they must be made if we want to be in a position for future success. I think we have the opportunity to do that in Wisconsin. I see it every day in local government. I think that is it. Let me stop there and ask if there are any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, disputes? Yes, sir.
The middle class is shrinking.
Yes.
The wealth is going to the top. How do you reverse that?
How do you reverse the wealth going to the top?
Right. Or should we?
John? That's my answer is John. How do you do that?
You have a financial collapse that destroys wealth left and right.
Yeah, but go ahead. You guys speak louder.
The strong correlation is between educational attainment and wealth concentration. I think Mark's point, and the thing that I would find most disturbing on a long-term demographic, is the high school dropout rate. It is the failure to succeed at the lower levels. I think if we were to think of Wisconsin's future in advanced manufacturing, I think we have a strong one. We will need folks trained through a technical degree or higher, and that will take care of it. You have some financial, actually my favorite book I have is Charles Murray just released a book about zip codes. At some level, how we have to reverse it is community by community. We have probably isolated, I'm going to get way off script here. So now strictly personal opinion here, and I'm not speaking as a member of the Department of Revenue, okay?
You'll be quoted tomorrow.
Yeah, no. One of the things that I think is the strength of the state of Wisconsin is we are more likely to have people that are well-to-do, working next to people who aren't. You go to New York City, you go to Washington, you don't see it. I actually think we are better positioned to solve it than anybody else.
Better in Wisconsin?
Yes. Yeah, no, to me, Charles Murray's book describes that in 1960, you would go to church with somebody that was a factory worker and he knew the attorney in town. These days, it doesn't happen, he says. And he puts different zip codes. I realize, one of the things that I appreciate about Wisconsin is I don't see that. I mean, I suppose I could go to Fox Point and a few others, but in the whole part of the state, I don't see it.
Other thoughts, questions? Yes, Bill?
One of the things that, from your early slides, Mark, is that we're paying twice as much as for comparable health care as any place else in the world, and getting basically the same. So, I mean, if you're looking for, for a little slack here, that appears to be a place to start looking hard at it.
Bill Winslow indicated that, the earlier slide indicated that we're paying twice as much as other developed countries for our health care, yet getting essentially no better quality health care, and we're also not seeing increases in our mortality rates or age longevity. And that would be a place to look if we're looking to modify our behavior to save a lot of dollars. I couldn't agree more, and absolutely the case. And that is
Mark,
I don't know what the
I
answer
would
is.
actually dispute that whole statistic, but that's all right. I think what you see in a lot of other countries is queues that are priced, and we price it. You have access to this country because we pay the price, and you're denied access in other countries.
Other questions, thoughts, comments? Yes? Donna?
On the rate of graduation,
Yeah.
there is a correlation between, it's sort of like rate of literacy goes with the rate of graduation in many instances.
Yes.
And so what happens then is you have more of the non-high school graduates who end up in prison repeatedly rather than working.
No doubt about it. The comment is literacy goes along with graduation rates. Lack of literacy results in lack of graduation, and then perhaps we look at the population in our, well, it is certain. When we look at the population in our incarceration facilities, if you do a study, and there's been studies done, the education level of the people incarcerated is significantly lower. The literacy rate is significantly lower. I guess it's a natural assumption. If we wanted to, if we provided, we focused more on education, and we gave and opened as many doors as is possible to higher education, either in our 2-year colleges, our tech colleges, our 4-year institutions, as many doors as possible, and provided the assistance necessary to prepare these younger people to consume that higher education. If we did that, then we would, as a result, see a decrease in our incarcerated population. You'd have a wealthier society. I mean, we're still going to have a segment of bad people, but we're going to see significantly fewer of them, and probably less intensity of bad. No question about it. That makes just common sense.
But there's a second part to that, is the children of those people who are either repeat offenders and incarcerated will also most likely trend the same way.
Oh, no question about it. You look at it, any child, that's where the saying, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. If you look at the parents or children, you look at the parents, you can see pretty much a correlation. To break that cycle, and we've tried it many, many times in this state. Tommy Thompson was probably the leader on trying, on creative attempts to break that cycle. With the Bride Fair, with the W-2, with countless programs and initiatives like that. Trying to break that cycle. It is very, very hard to break. And if you start getting in the middle of families, you run other risks. I mean, are we in a free society or are we not? And there are some, people can make allegations related to that. So it's very hard, but that would most definitely have a positive impact. Yes?
Quality of life. You and I sat around the dinner table with our mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't the case nowadays.
No.
Both parents are working. The kids aren't getting that home feel anymore. And if this continues, it's going to deteriorate the family and the kids' education.
Well, the family structure today is very different than the family structure of 1950. No doubt about it. The days of 2 parents and their 2.1 children sitting around the dinner table having a discussion about what happened in school, and June Cleaver asking her son, the Beaver, how things went. Those days, they're gone, and they are highly likely not to come back. And so we can reminisce about them, or we can recognize what we have and try to